Let's say you have 2 pivot tables in a worksheet and you've created a slicer for each of them. Just because the data referenced is the same data source doesn't mean that when you click on an item, both of the pivot tables update. So what we're going to do here is we're going to look at how we create 2 pivot tables on the one worksheet tab, and then how we create the slices and then connect the slices so that when we click one of these items, both the pivot tables update. Let's start at the beginning. First, we need to create the pivot tables. So here we have a range of data. Now the simplest way to do this is to go to Format as Table and choose a table layout. Excel says, is this the data that you want for your table? I'm going to click OK. Now you'll notice at the top it's called this table Table 2. That's important. I need to know that. Now, because I've used that Format as a Table option, I've got an option here to summarize with a pivot table. So I'm going to click on that and I'm going to choose this range and we'll click OK. Now we just need to lay out our first pivot table. So here I'm going to put our clients and our order amounts. I'll format these as currency with 0 decimal places. And I'll insert a slicer with just the client details. There's our first pivot table. Now I'm just going to create a second pivot table. To do this, I'm just going to click here. We'll go to Insert, Pivot Table, Table from Range. In here, I'm going to type in Table 2. Now, this tells Excel we're referencing the same data. We'll click OK. Now I need to lay this one out. I'm going to put salesperson down here and order amount over here. I'll format those. It's currency with no decimal places. And I'll put a slicer on. So we now have our basic layout for our 2 pivot tables. But at the moment, if I click on one, only the pivot table that this slicer relates to activates data here. We want it to connect to both. So if I choose this, it'll show a filtered pivot table up here and down here. So let's look at how we do this. First of all, I'm going to right click on the first pivot table and I'm going to go to Report Connections. You'll notice it has a checkbox here that's for this pivot table. So I'm going to click on that one and we'll click OK. So now that is now connected to both of these. Now we need to connect this one. So we right click, Report Connections, check the box and click OK. So now anytime I click on one of these, both of the pivot tables adjust. And I can clear the items by simply clicking the clear option here. So that's how you connect 2 slices on multiple pivot tables that are referencing the same data in Excel.